All right. Now, this last article really ties into that one, audience segmentation and retargeting strategies. This is from, Chris, this is your article from the Search Engine Journal, which is not really a newspaper-specific journal. It's really SEO, but you find a lot of stuff on here that we're able to apply to newspapers. And I don't know if it's always clear, the translation. Just looking at the original article, sometimes it's hard to see. So that's our job, is to make the connection and show you exactly how you can do this retargeting. Because a lot of this stuff they're talking about in here is fairly sophisticated, and a lot of it is for retargeting e-commerce and stuff like that.
Audience segmentation and creative retargeting strategies. This episode of Today in News Tech is made possible with audio articles by ourhometown.com. Today we're highlighting a piece by Andrea Atzori over at Search Engine Journal about how publishers can improve engagement with audience retargeting. The article, 7 Ways to Segment Your Audience for Successful Retargeting, provides several approaches to audience segmentation through analytics, marketing campaigns, and contextual insights. Too often, advertisers create a one-size-fits-all retargeting strategy that doesn't acknowledge any of the information they have about the users and how they have interacted with the brand, says Atzori. Here are the big takeaways. Retargeting campaigns can be used across networks and channels by basing an advertising audience on outside traffic sources, for instance, visitors to your YouTube channel who came from Facebook. Using a storytelling strategy through a series of ads also provides audience segments that feed into each other as users engage with individual ads in the sequence. Targeting life events through search criteria is an extremely effective method to create new audiences and personalize marketing content. Website search usage is another valuable source of information for segmentation. Audiences can be generated from site analytics to target users who have used a site's search functionality, but have yet to be converted. At Our Hometown, customers have access to extensive tools for analytics, ad network targeting, and sophisticated newsletter generation to tailor audience outreach and increase engagement.
So let's break these down one at a time, these 4 big takeaways. This quote was funny to me. Too often, advertisers create a one-size-fits-all retargeting strategy. Like, let's talk about one specific retargeting tool, which is Pixel on Facebook. Some background on that. Pixel is some code that you can put on your website that will put a cookie on the user's browser and then continue to show them ads for you as they go back on Facebook. So that's specifically for Facebook. There's other retargeting tools with other platforms, but that's how it works there. So a generic retargeting strategy would be put the pixel on the homepage and just send them, please subscribe ads on Facebook. I think what they're talking about here is doing something a little bit more granular. Tyler, let's talk to you about this because you set up the pixel for audio articles. So can you tell us a little bit about how a newspaper might use Pixel to create more segmentation?
Like you said, I think the more general approach is just to have the pixel on the page and say, did they view the page? If they did, send them all of our ads.
Right.
But the thing that Pixel does that I find so useful is you can track individual events and types of events throughout your entire site. So as long as the pixel's on your site, you can track who has viewed what page, what section of the page they viewed. Have they clicked a button? Have they filled out a form? As specific actions combine, you can use those actions to build audience profiles, essentially. And so you can target everyone that has clicked a subscribe button or everyone that has filled out your form.
And that's a perfect example. Let's just give our audience one thing that they can take away from this article. I think it would be, if the end goal is to convert to paid subscribers, you could have a pixel on your subscribe page and then a second tracking event for your pixel on the checkout page where the confirmation that the order has been placed, right?
While you're talking about the confirmation page, I would have 2 events on that confirmation page, one for viewing the page itself and one for actually hitting submit.
So you can really get to that level of detail. That's very cool. You mentioned that you like the interface, so I just thought I'd bring it up. Is there anything you want to show?
Scroll down a little further under that graph there is where I think they're really useful. So this shows individual events and actions that are happening and how many people are doing them. And if you expand, it'll go into further detail. I think I've tracked 3 pages actually. So this is on the audio articles page, the home page, and our contact form.
What are subscribe and lead. Are these just default things?
Yeah, these are all default titles that I've just
Okay.
kind of tried to assign to buttons that make the most sense.
Gotcha.
So almost all of these are either clicking on links or buttons. I think the only thing you can do on the page level is that view content, but then you can tag every single clickable item on your website with the pixel and assign each of those to whatever action you want them to represent.
So this is obviously a very powerful tool, but the thing we always need to caution the audience is that this is fully controlled and dependent on Facebook, which is just something to be aware of. Very powerful, but you also don't really have any of this data. You don't have access to it. You cannot go in and say, this person did this thing on my page. They keep that all behind the scenes.
And on that same line, the problem with this data is it can only be used to retarget on Facebook.
So it's all controlled by Facebook, and the whole retargeting experience is only going to be happening on Facebook, not as they go around the internet and things. You would need another retargeting tool for that. That's a nice overview there. Let's wrap it up by looking at how you can segment with a newsletter. I pretty much talked about this already. You could create a system that allows the audience to self-segment with just a little bit of input from you. Again, to review that, create a generic newsletter. Everyone needs at least a high-level weekly newsletter for their paper that has the top headlines in it. Then you can allow people to self-segment by saying, we have a new newsletter that's covering these sections in more detail every week. Sign up here. Allow them to opt in that way. But then you can further segment the audience without them opting in by just looking at the metrics and retargeting to the different lists. So you can create any number of lists on the website that are lists of emails, and those are your segments. And you can assign emails to those lists with the retargeting tool in the newsletter. So just by looking at what links were clicked, you can reassign everyone that clicked on that link to a certain category. And then you really own all the information. You have an email and you have these interest tags on them that say, this email is interested in these categories. And you can do all kinds of stuff with this. But the most practical thing is to just create a new newsletter vertical that just has content from that category. And I think it would work because usually in the weekly newsletter, it's not showing everything. It's just the top 3 or 4 stories from each category. If you've got 5 or 6 stories each week on sports, that sports newsletter would have everything. Think about what is the design of the generic newsletter. You almost have to design that at the same time that you're designing the segments, because you don't want them to be too alike. So maybe you take it down to 2 teasers from each category. If people click on each of those 2 teasers, well, they're very interested in that category, we should put them on that segment.
Related to that is if a publisher can segment this out and does get some traction with these category-based subsegments, then of course that lends itself to retargeting of which advertisers appear on those letters as well.
Sure.
Of revenue generating side to that as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. I think all of our publishers are going to love that. That's why I think publishers are drawn to the idea of creating a new newsletter, because it's just a new place to put an ad. But if this is going to be a specific audience, you really got to think about that audience and think about the ad that's going to go in there in the same way that you think about the content. It's got to all serve them. It's got to be a benefit, like this is a service that they're signing up for that they could opt out at any time. So I would say you don't want to create a segment that you're just going to send ads to. Make the ads match the content. So if it's a sports email, have it the local sports equipment store or something, sponsor it. Whatever you can do to make it sync up and just feel more natural. Great point, Chris. Appreciate that. All right. Sounds good, guys. We'll talk to you later. Have a good afternoon.
See ya.
Thanks all.
Thanks a lot. Bye. Thanks for watching Today in News Tech, the podcast on innovation in digital journalism. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and subscribe on YouTube or any of your favorite podcast apps. We'll see you tomorrow.
At our hometown, we help newspapers build WordPress websites, design native apps, and develop digital subscription models. If you are interested in a free prototype of your publication on WordPress, go to ourhometown.com and click the Contact Us button.